Hello and welcome to Deconstructing the Construct, episode 53, with John Daniels and myself. It's been a very active week. Things have changed yet again. There were, as per usual, two members' calls during the week. Tuesday my time, which ended up being a marathon of, what was it, 13 and a half hours. It was a very active day. And then again yesterday, Friday. And we ended up with two completely different, I'd say, themes and streams that turned up. However, both of them pointed to, for me anyway, that in some areas, not all yet, but at least in some areas, the deconstructing of this construct is complete. And we are now in the construction phase of whatever's next. And I feel, if you go back over the last few weeks and what's been shared on these updates, is that it feels very much like what we've been calling home for the last couple of years is now in what we would traditionally call the astral or the fourth. And from there, the construction can begin. And we've been talking for quite some time that it feels like everything, not just this construct, but everything, all of creation, everything outside of it, is actually becoming something brand new as a result of what took place in here. Everything was affected. And the cleanup that we're seeing in the political, in the media, in the pharmaceutical, in the military, all of these different areas that we're seeing do seem to be a reflection of the cleanup that's taken place everywhere else. That's how I see it. And yet I know that even within that, there is potentially deceptions and not everything is as it seems. So bottom line is that when it comes to how we are navigating this on a personal level, it feels very much like we have to be very, very mindful, yet again, of what we're giving our energy to and in what frequency. Because on Tuesday's call, there was a job that needed to be done. There was a doing that needed to be done, and it had to be done in a frequency of love, because it was a doing that was no longer about deconstruction or cleanup. It was about creation. And we are laying the foundational frequencies, codes, energies, whatever. It's the structure, it's the framework, it's the scaffolding that this new Windows 50, as Lily called it a couple of years ago, is being built on. So if you are, it's like we really are on the fence right now, with certain things still reconciling, closing out, and we're not fully in the building the new space yet, but we are moving into that space. So when you are doing that in your life, whether it's new relationships, new jobs, new ways of being, new ways of relating, new ways of communicating, trying to make those changes, it feels very, very important to come from the heart and from a frequency of love when you're laying the new foundations. And you see, if you're still over here and you're still doing the reconciling and the deconstructing stuff, you may handle that differently, but that's where it feels like we're at right now, right in this space where we're dealing with both now. And we can get into these two streams and themes that led us there. But firstly, did you come to the same place? Are you feeling the same things? Did those 2 days and those energy streams lead you to the same conclusions?
Oh,
or
absolutely.
anything else that lead you there?
Absolutely. First, I just wanted to say sorry for my audio last week, everyone. I know that was terrible, but we're moving through it. We're going to create with love for the future, and hopefully this will work out. But definitely, I mean, the momentum that was building for the last 2 months, it never died down. It just continued peaking, 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 peaking. And then it was this weekend that it feels like that wave that had been cresting for so long finally crashed in. I don't know if you had wanted to talk about the waves and things like that, but I definitely noticed a big shift in terms of, like you said, in terms of manifestation. It's been happening so quick and so easy, but being mindful of the small details in terms of where you're creating from makes a huge difference, because the manifestation is still happening. But like you said, if it's coming from a place of not 100% love, you're going to see that in return in this instant manifestation. And that's how I've seen it play out in this last weekend for sure. And I've had a couple of moments where I've realized that even though it feels like this wave has crested, it's like inside I still have the energy of that momentum going. And that was driving me crazy. And I had to force myself to just be still. I think on like 3 different occasions, just to try to bring myself to as much stillness as possible, keeping that alpha wave concept in mind and doing anything I can do to just quiet my mind, sit out, have a cigarette, ground, do whatever I needed to do, just to bring things in and call in the momentum of the last 2 months, because it felt like I didn't need to actually reconcile it. Like I didn't need to go through it and dig through it, but I did need to let it just kind of wash over so that the creation could happen. And
well, speaking of the waves, I know last week we said it was at like 99.9999, whatever it is. And according to our dowser, it did complete. It did reach 100. And that probably does coincide with last weekend.
Yeah, because our call was Friday my time last week, and it was Saturday morning that I woke up to that message. And that was the night that the energy definitely peaked. In my house, I ended up getting sick that night. My neighbor ended up getting sick that night. We had to do a little bit of purging. There was a little alcohol involved, nothing crazy, but it was definitely a necessary release just to, and for the next week since then up until now, it's been very quiet energy.
Well, the other thing I have noticed a correlation with is, well, there's actually 2 things. It feels like this merge is happening in steps. So we go through a period of merge and then it stops and we acclimatize, or not. Because when it feels like we're in that acclimation space, that's when there's a burst of violence as well. So there'll be, just spontaneous shootings, knife attacks, random murders, like the crazy shit where people are losing their minds. That seems to be happening in phases, in blocks. And I've noticed it's in that phase where it feels like we are acclimating again. So you do either have a purge, physical purge, emotional purge, just acclimatize, or you lose your mind, and I've noticed maybe 3 now to see the pattern. I'm just going to, you out, yeah. And that's one thing I've noticed. The other thing is also the direct correlation between the Schumann whiteouts, those Schumann whiteouts. People have one of 2 responses. They're either completely wired, cannot sleep, totally energized, can't sit still, manic, or are sleeping through the whole thing. Like can't stay awake, no energy, just unconscious. And there doesn't seem to be any middle ground at the moment when it comes to that. And that also feels to be related to what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago in regards to that download I had about the merge with us. It's even being noticed in meditation, or out-of-body experiences even. That, okay, so say you're meditating and you go somewhere, you see someone you know, but you know that physically their 3D body is wide awake. That sort of astral version of them that you come across is a little bit spaced out. But if they're asleep, they're really crystal clear and they're very present. I've heard that from a member and from Facebook message, something similar. But theirs was more of an out-of-body experience. So that's also, I mean, it's two things. It's not like, grand confirmation, but it's two things starting to lead some substance to that theory that this merge is happening with our consciousness as well. And so that's my two things of observation.
Well, I would totally agree with the acclimatization jitters because at least I was telling you that the town that I had just moved out of, since I'd moved out of there, and which, is only about a week, there's been 2 stabbings, house burned down, numerous people got hit by cars, someone got hit by a train. So it's just been chaos, chaos, chaos in, this one little bubble that I'm paying attention to. In my own little sphere, everything is peachy keen, but, it was a place where people were quite resistant to change. So it happens. But yeah, and I've even noticed that with just people that I've interacted with here, that it's like, if you don't trust the process of whatever it is that you're going through, and you get into the simplest moment of doubt or, oh, this is an obstacle, I see the aggression just brim right to the surface. And it goes from being completely placid and everything's okay to just like total anxiety, aggression. Oh, this isn't working out. Even when I can rattle, a list of 100 manifestations off the top of my head from the last week, they still, are concerned about, oh, this might not work out. And that again is just, not allowing this flow, not allowing this acclimate. It's almost like a PTSD, I feel like. Because I do feel like we've jumped timelines to the point where it was like, we had this timeline where this certain operating system worked and you would expect things to be an obstacle, and they always were. And now it's not like that at all. But nobody really wants to hear that. So I guess you live and you learn.
Yeah, we were talking about that last night ourselves over here, that we've still got these hangovers.
Yeah.
Of expecting the worst, of not expecting the best, of expecting obstacles, of distrusting people, the universe at large, whatever. Not feeling, and self-worth still keeps coming up in amongst all of this.
Big time.
It's one of our deepest core issues, it feels like. And every one of these adjustment periods touches on it in some way, shape or form. For you, there was also the mention, and there was a lot of comments. I don't know if you've been to see them, but or if you've got any, but there was the money, power over through money had been hit a nerve for a lot of people. But again, that comes back to self-worth.
Yeah, and it feels like self-worth is almost like the final obstacle, because at this point, all that really matters is that you believe in yourself. If you believe I got it, you've got it. If you don't, you're fucked.
Agreed, totally.
And that plays into the money too, because the money is the one thing that they can hold over you. Where it's like, oh,
well, it's been so embedded in our sense of self-worth to identify with. you know. So the themes, I'm just interested to see whether these have showed up for anybody else this week too. Tuesday, we had the bull in various forms. So in the form of a Minotaur, and this is in the energetic. And then we all kind of discovered the Minotaur walking through France.
Casually.
Yeah, just casually. There was a connection to the white water buffalo. And again, it was all about love. This whole download, this whole observation, this whole communication and experience was driven by love. And this ties into with money too, because in the communication that was being had, and what I saw was a bull with the nose ring, the septum piercing thing, like the Wall Street one. And I saw the ring be pulled from the nose. And the words, and because love had already been part of this, which I'll get back to, but it also tied into the love of money. It was a phrase that went through my head. So I am watching the financials at the moment because I'm expecting something to shift. Because it was such a really strong vision, and a very emotional one too. But it tied in with what this whole theme included was, like I said, a Minotaur, the financial bull, and a connection to why we slaughter bulls with bullfighting, and what that really represents on energetically. The connection to the white water buffalo. And there was I don't know if it was the backstory behind these two characters or what it was really, but it was like a love story. And what it felt like was the Minotaur had been locked out. And this also connects to the Labyrinth, which was the other theme. But it felt like the Minotaur had been locked out. The white water buffalo was here. The two were separated. There was this huge love story between them. And that he was now out of the labyrinth, able to make contact again and reconnect. And everything the bull represents is about to, I don't know, reconcile, be brought back to its purity, because it feels like the whole story around the bull has been perverted and inverted like everything else.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no, it has horns, so it has to be evil. But there was an interesting thought, because I know someone had mentioned the connection between the word Minotaur and monetary, which got my wheels turning. And even when you talk about the Wall Street bull with his ring, what's going on in Spain with the bull killings, it's not just the energy of the bull that the market is trying to harness, but it's more or less the energy of the bull under dominion.
Domesticated.
Exactly.
Controlled, yeah.
Imprisoned, soft, like that is the energy. And I think that was the flip of what we saw, is that it seemed like this was a bull that had been freed, like you had said, that it was no longer in the labyrinth, that it was,
Well, they use bull market. It's a bull market as an economic term, and I don't know what it means, but there is that term.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it doesn't mean robust when everybody's buying.
Yeah, but
I think so.
I wonder if that's what they're trying to imply, is that it's robust because they have the power to tame a bull. Like there's that implication of dominance. I mean, I'm just
this whole thread, this whole thread that we went through started with the frequency of love. And I'm just wondering now, actually, based on what we said earlier about the construction of the new, is it laying the foundational frequencies for a love-based method of exchange?
Well, that would go right along, Lisa, with the new dragons and the dragon lines, the new energy grids, and the fact that a new dragon would be needed to birth a new realm.
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
Well, I'm just saying that it goes along. Sorry.
No, it does. No, but I just made the connection then. That maybe that's what he was really.
And if you pull the bull's ring out, that's the downfall of the current monetary system, which allows room for the new.
And it would be it would have to be, because if he's got anything to do with it, if this Minotaur, the bull energy has got anything to do with it, it's got to be a love-based exchange.
And there was a native prophecy about Lady White Calf, who was a white bull, essentially, but a woman. So a white, I don't know what a female term for
white buffalo calf woman, is that the one?
Yes, something. But I thought that it was interesting that they used the words white calf. And when I was Googling just white calf, one of the first things that popped up is that the Masonic apron is made out of white calf skin. So throw that piece out.
Really?
Of course, I mean, go figure. But they would have a hand in this? I don't believe it.
No, couldn't possible.
But that could be your love story right there.
Okay, in stocks, the bull represents up and down markets or prices. Okay.
Actually, I screwed that up. The bull represents prices going up. The saying was bulls run up the stairs, bears jump out the window. So the bull would represent a rising market trend.
Ah, gotcha.
I kind of screwed that up, sorry. I fixed it later.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw all the key words that popped out for us, just to see if anybody else picked up on the same sort of threads, because it was a bull, Minotaur, financial, Labyrinth, which also led to the Rosalind Chapel, what's that other one called? The Chartreuse or
Chartreuse.
Chartreuse. Labyrinth.
We both butchered it.
Probably. Love, money, the love of money, and potentially a new love-based exchange. Interesting. It also felt that day that we got confirmation that Ensa, who I mentioned last week, the gatekeeper, opened the gate on the 11th. Energetic confirmation. So take that for whatever credence you give it, but that was really strong on Tuesday. What would the date have been on that?
The 11th here was a Sunday, so I think it would have been a Monday for you. No.
Yeah, so Tuesday got the confirmation for me. Okay. Did anything else stand out on that day for you in the call? Any of the other threads that I've missed?
There was a conversation that we were having about the Carrington Event that pinged me. And the Carrington Event, just in case anyone listening doesn't know, is when a solar flare had come through in the 1800s and it blew out all the telegraphs. And I guess that's how they mark solar flares now. And it just reminded me of a story of something I had overheard this week. There was a guy that had come to the house that I'm moving in to do some work outside, and we got to talking to him. And he had said that he had a radio show, and he brought on all these different woo-woo people from all different walks of life. And once they started agreeing on something and got a really good flow going and everyone was on the same page, that the radio tower just blew out. And that got me thinking about, what we perceive as something like solar flare, Carrington Event, whatever. And I know that there was apparently another crazy magnetic anomaly that happened in the last 48 hours or so with, I can't even remember. The one particular graph where it shows you all of the connecting threads between Earth and the magnetic connections between the planets. It almost looks like a spider. And I think a couple months ago,
I think Dee did a post on it.
yeah, I definitely saw her post it on Facebook. And that had me going in.
Let me see if I can find it. Here we go.
But, usually people might be inclined to think that like these overwhelming amounts of energy that would blow out a machine might be something like interference or an attack, but it could just be agreement that, enough people are agreeing that these things are breaking down. Because I'm sure it's just not designed to carry that vibration.
Got ya. I can't find it. I had it up yesterday and it won't show up again.
But yeah, and this had happened a couple months ago too. And I feel like when it happened a couple months ago, it lined up with one of the waves. God forbid I had a list of dates.
If only. Russ just wrote something interesting. Tesla towers have been spotted around the States, perhaps ready to go online when a something or such. You mucked that one up too, what?
Oh, sorry. I just kind of blurt things out at the top of my head. I shouldn't. I should keep it to myself. No, I posted it. There was a video of a couple in Texas driving out in the middle of the boondocks. And there was a tower that nobody knows what it does or is there for. It looks exactly like Tesla towers. Well, not exactly, but it's the basic idea. And people were putting it together that it's just there, and they're kind of popping up places. And so they don't have this theory because they were just going, what is it? But my personal theory was whenever the sunspot things happen or they take out the controlled power grid or whatever happens with our power, perhaps they're being placed or are placed strategically around the planet to provide power for us and change us over during that time. That's just my theory.
So they've all been dismissed as like 5G towers and other.
Well, I don't know about all. The only one I really saw was that couple in Texas, and I did post that. I could find it again if you want me to post it. I'll have to look for it. But yeah, it was really interesting.
Wasn't there a company that took credit for that called like VIVIS Technologies?
Yeah. Yes.
And they claimed that it was essentially free energy. They didn't give Tesla any credit, God forbid, but they said, "Oh, we figured it out after how many centuries?"
I saw that, John. To me, it looked like public story, and there's always a sub story. But again, this is just my take on it, and your take might be just as valid as mine. I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting to think about though, because that's the first thing that struck me when I saw them.
Oh, sure. And this was a conversation that even came up when the Bitcoin conversation got crazy last year, and there was something that I was watching. I can't even remember what it was, but they were talking about all of the Bitcoin mining that they were doing, that there was a lot happening in Vegas. And there was somebody saying, when you have these massive cities like Vegas that are just consuming incredible amounts of power, Dubai, forget about it, that the only sensible way that these places could actually operate, or even, the massive mining rigs in China and Russia, is if they were utilizing some kind of free energy. Because how is it possible that, they say that these Bitcoin mining rigs are using more energy in the last year than in all of the industrialized age, but the grids are fine-ish. My Wi-Fi is fucked, but everything else is okay.
Oh, well, yeah, if you did find the link, I'd be interested to see a picture of it. JJ, you want to say something?
Yeah, I read that article about the Tesla tower thing. Heavy military involvement, heavy intelligence stuff. It is by the look of it, very similar to the Warrenclyffe Tower. I'm really up on Tesla stuff. I've got piles and piles and piles of patents and stuff like that. It looks like they're trying to take what he originally was trying to do, which was global instantaneous power at any distance, along with communication and everything else. But we're not ready for it because the infrastructure for us to tap into that isn't there yet. You need a really tall antenna, like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 feet, something like that, and then a really strong ground in the ground. And that's where you drive the power from, is the potential between the ground and this antenna at these certain frequencies. And once it gets started, it doesn't stop. It basically rings the earth like a bell, and it just keeps ringing. And you just tap into that energy that it's ringing at, and you've got free energy wherever you need it. That was what Tesla was working on, and it's very possible that they're going to do that, but my guess is because of the military involvement, they've got other agendas involved with that. And so far, there's only one that I know of. It'd be nice if there were more, but they're being very close-lipped about what they're doing, which is usually a pretty good sign that they're up to no good.
Well, not necessarily. I mean,
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to sound like the eternal fucking optimist. And
well, no. I mean, look it. I mean, if we need a new financial system, a fair exchange based in love. We need a new grid system, an energetic grid system, therefore, to support it. All right. And maybe I'm biased about the military because, like, I'm from the military, but there's good and bad everywhere. And I think things are changing all over. And these towers may be being set up or have been set up to support a new energy grid for the production of free energy for the planet. Along with new financial system, etc.
And as things stand, Karen, is there a major corporation out there that you could trust to do this? I mean, if this was a positive thing, if this really was there as a backup plan, because they're planning on taking out, a lot of these big corporations and a lot of the monopolies and all of that, who would you get to implement it? It would.
Well, Trump is, well, I think, you've got Trump, whose uncle was, in charge of the Tesla papers after Tesla died. You've got the military behind Trump. That's how he got in. I think everything's changing, and there's a lot being done behind the scenes and in secret right now, in particular.
Do we know when these towers went up?
As I recall, this person in the video, they saw it like a year and a half ago, and I think they said it just kind of came up overnight, and nobody knows what it's for. I mean, nobody in the town. I'm trying to find it now. Not as easy as I thought. I watched so many videos. I'll try to find it. I found one picture of it. I'll post that. I'll send it to you privately. No, okay. Yeah.
Thank
you.
And
I don't know enough about this stuff to know if it's in any way related to Trump's Space Force thing, too. I don't know.
Huh. Well, that adds a whole new spin.
Right?
No, wrong picture.
I know, I'm trying to delete it. I thought it was, they look, when they're really tiny, they all look like that. Sorry.
Okay. So all of that was Tuesday. That was just Tuesday. Friday, yesterday's call led to, also included some interesting things, which again was about the new. And it was kicked off with, and if I say this wrong, please correct me, because there's another word which is similar, and I don't mean that one. Anasazi, the ancient Pueblo peoples from North America. Another one of those groups that sort of supposedly had incredible civilization, lots of architecture, lots of technology, and disappeared. From the very little search we did, there's a bunch of theories on where they went and why they went. But it was kicked off by feeling them, seeing them in the energetic. And again, it was as if they hadn't been outside the construct. They were still in it, but they were in some sort of pocket somewhere that was just out of reach. And they returned. And it was all very ceremonial. It was all very beautiful. And there was a gift. There was an offering. They offered a gift, which visually looked to me like a rough cut salt lamp at first, because it actually glowed from within. And over the course of this, I realized it was an egg. And at first it was confusing because the frequency of the energy was different. But it turned out it was in fact a dragon egg. And the reason it felt different is because this dragon is different. It's new. It's, in terms of the energetic and the mythological, dragons are creators of realms. So if we are at that point, which we felt like we got to on Tuesday, of realizing of the construction of the new phase, and we really are building something completely new and creating something completely new, then a dragon with a different new frequency is required to lay that structure, to lay the foundations, to lay that scaffolding. And even though this was probably all completely symbolic and metaphorical, that's what it felt like. It was confirmation of that the new creation energy is here and is starting to lay those foundations for this new space, for Windows 50, whatever we want to call it. Was there anything on that you wanted to add?
Well, it's interesting because the idea, the concept of a culture just jumping has come up a couple of times. I know people have mentioned it with the Mayans, Egyptians, Atlanteans, forget about it. But even in this case, it's like, if you were going to jump wherever the hell you would go, it seems like this new space that we've moved into would be like an ideal landing pad. So if any of these cultures just pop up, I don't think anyone would be surprised. But even if they're just popping up energetically, like you said, you know, perhaps this space that we're in right now is a lot more conducive to at least communicating. Because the way that you described it, it almost reminded me of Jenny of the dream with the pink bubbles, where, you know, we're all kind of floating in our spheres and pocket dimensions, whatever you want to call them. But again, if you were going to jump somewhere, why not jump here?
Yeah, I agree.
And again, that area that they came from is so steeped in bizarre energy. I mean, portals everywhere. You have Sedona in that region. You have more military bases than you can count. That Sunspot Observatory would have been in that same area. So it's really just a hotbed of bizarre interdimensional paranormal activity. So
yeah, it's called the Four Corners area of the states. So what is it? Colorado, Arizona, and whatever's next to them.
right. And you have to think that that in and of itself was intentional, mapping that out. It's the only place in the United States where we have, you know, a perfect four corners like that. like
Oh,
an X
really?
marks the spot almost. Yeah, and there actually is a monument there that is like an X marks the spot that you can stand in. And I know that it's come up a couple of times, the idea of like 90-degree angles somehow correlating to the idea of jumping dimensions because it's like perpendicular to us as opposed to being parallel. So I don't know if that's an homage to that, but if you were going to jump, I guess you were going to use that 90-degree angle there, just like the Egyptians and everyone else.
Ah, cool. Thank you. Russ just found a picture of this, which I'll share for a second.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so what's all this? Is that, I'm not looking at the landscape there, am I? Is that a building?
Yeah, this is when you watch the video, it's a video they took like outside of their car driving past it. So I just took a wide shot of it just to give you an idea. You can watch the video. I did put it the video link up too, not just pictures.
Okay, thank you.
It was just really
I'll post
yeah.
them with the archive anyway.
Okay.
And that's Tesla's tower. But yeah, I see the similarity. Okay, thank you. It's like an accelerator. What was it? What else was I going to say around that? Oh, physically. The things that people are experiencing physically. I had 2 stories on Friday, just within our members group. This could potentially relate back to what we were told 3 months ago, maybe, that we would begin to see, our eyes will change and we will begin to see the code. We'll begin to see even the difference between heart source beings and NPCs, or bots as we call them, or even those who are, we've been told, virus in human form. So there was 2 stories that were the same. Seeing, it doesn't look like an aura, it's something different. Words that were used to describe it was like sparkly liquid crystal, as if when you sometimes touch an LCD screen or computer screen or something like that, and you get that halo, that rainbowy halo around where you've touched the screen. It's like that. And the person that you're looking at is the black spot where you've touched the screen, and there it's around you. And even somebody on this call is seeing the same thing in the energetic. So, and I'll leave it up to you if you want to go into that.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same halo, exactly described like you just described it, only with on the outside of a shape of a person, but the person's not there. I'm here alone. So I'm seeing energetic people with the same halo. So I'm assuming they're heart-based, and I'll say, okay, you're welcome.
That's 3, really.
Yeah.
Just in this small group who've described the same thing. So there has to be more out there. The other thing is people's bowel situation changing in one way or another, having these spontaneous purges. And that seems to be happening. I wonder if it's in alignment with the, I think it is actually, with the acclimation phase we were talking about before. You know, there's merge, acclimatize. And yeah, it does totally coincide with that, actually. But again, bottom line from yesterday was there are the very foundational frequencies, codes, structures, whatever, being laid right now for the new space. So that's whatever's happening next. whether it's Windows 50 or what, but I don't believe we are going to be the only ones in it. Not that we are now, really. What am I saying? This place is crowded.
You mean we're not going to be the only ones noticing it?
Yes, everybody's coming in. So, anything you guys want to add to this?
Well, I can say with the acclimatizing, last week before the wave ended, the day before, I'm pretty sure I peed about 100 times. Got concerned at one point. Everything was fine after that, but definitely a necessary purge.
It's one of my favorite ways to do it too, apparently.
Right? Painless.
Yeah, true.
If you're lucky.
But mighty inconvenient.
Well, it is. It is when you do it at 3-4 times a night. It's a bit much.
Exactly.
Okay, is there any questions or comments that any of you want to add to this before we wrap up? No? We covered it all, did we?
We solved it.
We solved it. We fixed it. So yeah, I am keen to hear back from anybody who's had these things, these themes, these topics, these images show up for them in the last week. We were very much drawn to, also last Tuesday, the area around Libya and Sudan, and the flow of the Nile. That was Tuesday as part of the whole Roseline Minotaur bull stuff too. And more recently in around Crete. Was that Tuesday too, Crete?
Yeah, because that would have been the Minotaur and all that.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. And I don't know how this is going to translate physically. We usually do see something show up in the physical that tells us this is, oh, look, that's how that's playing out. That's how what we just saw in the energy playing out. But it's hard to know how this one's going to play out. And whatever period or whatever location, that we were looking at could not be found by name on a modern day map. We had to go back at least 400 or 500 years. And I'm still not sure we've actually pinpointed it, but it's that area.
And this is the area, Libya, Sudan, that region?
Yeah, something feels like it's going to go down there. The other two places that keep coming up are Atlantis, and we're back to Antarctica. So I know they've recently decided that there's actually 2 land masses under the ice of Antarctica. But every few months we just keep getting pulled back there. And Atlantis just keeps coming up over and over and over consistently for months.
Well, I don't know if you had the chance to talk about it on the DTC, but they even think that they might have found Atlantis in Africa, in the Sahara.
True.
And which essentially, I'm sure it was all one kingdom at some point.
Well, I saw all of those videos when we were in that period where we kept being drawn to Africa, just off the coast, where that is, off the west coast. That's
right near Lanzarote.
Lanzarote, yeah. So that area, I don't know. Stay tuned, because something's going to go down there or be revealed there.
Sudan, I know Sudan has more pyramids than Egypt. It's just so war-torn that no one goes there. But maybe not more than Egypt, but they do have a ton of pyramids there. And they're much sharper as opposed to being a perfect pyramid size like this. But again, there's just so much bloodshed. But there was something interesting in that region too, because Ethiopia is right there where they, claim they have the Ark and all of that. And I know within the last 2 months, maybe, Ethiopia has had this long, ongoing civil war with Eritrea, which is on their northern border. And they were fighting over that one particular strip of land where the Ark is. And just in the last 2 months, they finally ended their civil war and ended their ceasefire. And they, celebrated it by finally opening up the telephone lines between the two countries. And there was these stories that came out that people from Eritrea and Ethiopia were just dialing random numbers just to say hello. So, but energetically, I thought that was very interesting because they were clearly just fighting over that patch of land right there.
The things you don't find out on mainstream media.
Surprise.
Minoan religion, that's Crete, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. More bulls. All right. God, I wonder how long it's going to take for something to show up. Because that bull ring, the ring was violently ripped from the bull's nose.
Well, the financial system situation, I should say, seems to be most eminent, at least in this country.
Everywhere.
Yeah, but everything.
Yeah, everywhere. But I mean, as far as taking down the Fed and leading the way in the demise of the central banking system, there's more and more hype against the Fed in this country. More statements being made.
But anything waiting in the wings to replace the Fed and the central banking system, it's all much the same. We'll go back to gold back to silver back to both, or cryptocurrency, which is the freaking biggest joke of all as far as I'm concerned. Or
yeah, I know. I think it's something totally different than that. Because there's been a lot of factions, the dragon families and whatever. There's been a lot of factions trying to come up with an alternative to this monetary system because they knew it was going to crash, and they can save themselves through cryptocurrencies, revaluing, shit, whatever. I feel like this is something totally different, and not coming from any of those sectors, if you know what I mean. But I could not.
It can't be a love-based or a heart-based or
exactly. And so it feels to me like it's going to be something totally different. Trump has not said a word about what the alternative is going to be. Just very much, blaming the Fed for everything, and the expectation, I assume, that it's going to be replaced. But he's said nothing about how it will be replaced and with what. It's these other factions around that talk about this fund and that fund and this, dragon family has this much gold and blah, 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 and whatever, none of it love-based. So, yeah, I'm real curious about what's going to happen. But I feel like as far as all the factors that we've discussed, that feels to me the most eminent before, say, a new energetic grid with Tesla technology or something like that. Because it seems to be based on the financial aspect for anything else to follow.
Go, John.
Well, I was just wondering if it was last week's show or in between then and now that we talked about the Rothschild Selloffs.
I was just going to mention that too.
Ooh, okay. Go for it.
Well, everyone's probably heard by now, but the Rothschilds are apparently selling off their trusts to the tune of how many billion?
More than I got.
Yeah, me too. The last time they did this was apparently in the lead up to World War I. Is that right? for World War II.
And ironically, they did it around the same time that they were doing a big World War I memorial, because I guess here we have Veterans Day in Europe. I forget what you guys call it. But that was that same week. And that was just a bizarre week in general, because Trump had tweeted out at one point, isn't there something more we could celebrate than, you know, the end of a war? Which I just thought was, you know, a bizarre thing for Mr. Military to say. But if you're trying to avoid World War III, I guess it, you know, makes sense. But so
obviously the speculation is they're planning. There's also obviously lots of different speculation, but one is they're playing out the same script. And that this obviously means they're planning World War III to all of their, or much of their revenue streams have been cut off, and with trafficking and of people, of drugs, of everything, you know, being squeezed, that they're running low on funds, and this is a revenue raising scheme. They know that this is over, and they're cashing out while they can, so that they've got the means to get into whatever's next and control that. Could be any of those, could be all of those, could be none of those.
I even like the idea, I forget who said it, but they were like, well, maybe it was a play. Just give away all the money.
Yeah, they've suddenly become philanthropists, and they're just going to give it all away.
Their heart grew one size bigger.
Do you think the new energies can support that kind of a plan? I don't see that happening myself.
No.
I mean, at all. It would never take off the ground.
A day late and $1 short. Or $1 trillion short.
I'm wondering what it represents on the energetic, in the sense of, I mean, if there is I mean, the thing is, if these are the guys who have all the money in the world and who control all the money, firstly, who's buying? But is it a symbolic plead for mercy or something? I don't know. It depends who
That's
buys.
what I was thinking. It's in exchange for their life.
Could be. It all depends on who buys, I guess. If anyone does. Although, was there not...
I don't think that they disclosed a buyer, but they said that it would be wrapped up by the first quarter of 2019, which is
but confirmed there is one. There is a buyer. They just won't disclose who.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Right.
I could be wrong on that, though.
Maybe Trump's confiscating it all.
That's what I thought was most likely.
Our birth certificates was the collateral. Trump collected them, so it's rumored. Okay. JJ, you've got your hand up?
Yeah. One last little thought about that Tesla thing.
Mm-hmm.
The way it worked was basically he was going to excite the entire planet in relationship to the atmosphere, and that was how it was going to work. That particular style of technology has been usurped. It's old. There's no reason to implement that at this point. There's other energy systems out there. Remember those 5,000 or 6,000 patents that have been held on national security issues or whatever? A whole mess of those have to do with, quote, free energy or over unity engines or whatever. And one of the consequences of that is you'll be able to have the power where you need it, as you need it, without wires. You'll just pull the power out of the vacuum of space that we're all in. In other words, you don't need an antenna stuck in the air and a ground wire to extract power. But the consequence of that is think of a battery that's any size you need it to be, with any kind of power output that it needs to be, where it needs to be used. So in a sense, if you got a motor, it's self-powered because it's got its own battery built in, and it never needs recharging, that kind of stuff. The physical energetic potential for some of what's going to be unfolded when these patents come out and when the rest of the stuff gets cleaned up is just going to blow people's minds. It's so far beyond what we're normally thinking of in terms of what's possible. And most lots and lots and lots of this stuff already exists, so we don't have to recreate the wheel. We just basically give me one of those. Replicators are to me a pinger. As soon as you have a personal or a family replicator, you don't need grocery stores. I mean, you do if you want to get fresh food, but survival becomes a thing of the past with a replicator, because you can create your own clothes, you can create your own stuff, food, whatever it happens to be. And that's just kind of like a pinprick in what's possible out there. So the Tesla thing is as nifty as it looks. I suspect, just because of what I saw in the background, I would love to be wrong, but I didn't feel like they were coming from a place of love, because that's not part of their mindset, the people that are running the show there. But the technology, the Tesla technology, is viable. It's just that there's stuff that is more sophisticated and simpler at the same time that's already come up that will just usurp it and just leave. We don't need to use that kind of stuff. So just another 2 cents or something like that.
Oh, question. The Wi-Fi that we currently use, the 5G, that all this stuff is obviously very, very harmful.
Yeah.
I'm assuming at this point that whatever energy the Tesla energy was producing is not.
Yeah,
no, it was based on natural rhythmic harmonics. It wasn't
Microwaving us.
Yeah, it wasn't based on agitation and rattling the shit out of stuff just to see if you can, get a reaction out of it or whatever. It was, Tesla stuff was in harmony with the natural rhythms and cycles and frequencies and tones of nature and the cosmos. That's how it worked.
And my understanding too is it would handle not only electricity, but all of our communication needs. I mean, it can do like everything.
You just reminded me though, and it's kind of funny, that my husband had a dream 3 or 4 weeks ago, which I shared with you guys and showed you the photos of it when he drew it all up. It was all about this. And because you just triggered it, JJ, because he saw in the dream, he was working with the scientist who was creating it all. And he saw exactly how it all works. He understood it all and had no idea how to put it together. But he saw that we would carry personal devices that actually captured the energy our bodies produce, and that there was like 1 tower per city, because that's how powerful these things were. And your personal device would tap in, could actually feed energy to the main tower, which would radiate and receive energy as well, and communication. It did everything. Oh, that's a cat? I didn't know what that was. Oh, that's too funny.
My little attention whore.
Beautiful. Something about that ankh. Yes. Like the handbags the Anunnaki carried. And yes, Lily did say that she was speaking to scientists. There was that message too.
And the other thing that keeps rattling around in my brain is we create all of these devices and these aids, these technological marvels, and at their base, what they are is a substitute for our natural abilities, which are going to be coming back online. So the need for a device to communicate with someone, it's built in, not added on. the need to go somewhere. It's built in, not added on. So there's a lot of the stuff, the fancy gadgets, or some of the, shall we say, a number of the functions that we would normally assign to them that we won't need because they will come online and be built in, not added on, which is an ideal way, because that means you're not tying into a system. You are the system. In other words, you activate, you enable, you do what you need to do because that's what you do.
Well, I can say for myself that these 2 days I'm referring to on the members' calls, my telepathic communication with the energetic just took on a whole new level.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just happened this past week.
And there's something to be said for that, in spite of all the 5G, in spite of everything, because they're just rolling it out more and more. But like you said, the telepathy is still getting stronger. The intuition is still getting stronger. The manifestation is still getting stronger. So, yeah, no, I think we are the technology of the future. And that's not some, singularity endorsement, so calm down.
No, well, back in 2013, we were calling it iTech.
Okay. I'll take it.
Internal tech, inner tech, iTech. Super A human. Where did that come from? Lulu, what was that message? Damn.
Did she say 2.0? In that same spot?
I have to go and find it. She did make a reference to superhuman A.
And with the A, I'm just thinking of the alpha.
Point. Hang on, I'm just going to pause. Okay, I will post that message when I find it with the archive for reference, because she does make a reference to superhuman A. And yeah, I remember thinking at the time, sounds a lot like iTech. Has anybody else noticed those gifts, abilities, whatever you want to call them, have gone up a notch recently? I mean, for me, it was telepathic communication, but it was also in the energetic. I haven't really played with it, I guess. In the physical, I should do. See if that's changed as well.
I would have to say yes, Lisa, but I'm not channeling anybody. Just saying.
No, me neither.
I think telepathy has definitely gotten stronger. Intuition has definitely gotten stronger. And it also seems like the ability to hold space when you're in the moment and change events as they're happening has also gotten stronger. And what I mean by that is, like, say you're in a chaotic situation and you want things to mellow out, being able to do that just by centering, going within, that whole spiel has gotten a lot stronger.
Okay.
Even to communicate with, like, eye contact. Like, I try doing these things where, like, I try to just communicate by sending something through my eyes to another person's eyes. That it's like, are you picking up that has gotten much stronger too. Just over here. But no dreams. For 2 weeks straight, I feel like I haven't had a split second's worth of a dream to bring back.
Same.
This is the dream. Yeah.
Yeah, same. And when we were getting all those whiteouts, and I said earlier that people were either wired or the other end of the spectrum, I was the other end of the spectrum. I was out within moments of hitting the pillow and sleeping through the night, and no dreams, no nothing. That lasted about 5 days, but I'm still not dreaming. So, Karen, did you want to say something too to what we were talking about?
Oh, just definitely I was going to bring up quicker manifestation, quicker change, like John was saying. If you're in a situation and energy is negative, you can change it quickly. And definitely telepathy at the same time, especially with those that are closest to you, I assume. You know, for me, it's my family and a couple people, friends. I haven't practiced, like, you know, out in public because I'm not out in public very much.
What just got posted? Oh, thank you. Okay, a couple of things. Russ, this just in, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. On November 16, 2018, President Trump signed into law the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency Act of 2018. What's the implications of that, personally?
LMH lagging behind your website.
Oh, I don't know. Gina just posted it in another chat, and I just thought it was really, really kind of timely. I don't know what it means yet, really. I have to research it. I mean, it just came over just now.
It could be what they need to then use all the data they've got on the deep state.
I'll put the link in for the article, though, too. I didn't do that.
Thank you. Okay, the transcript. This message was received on September 29. The imprint of us all, creating an error code. You are outside of all creation, one of its own, never seen before. This is why it's so hard to see past the dark space when you close your eyes. It's also a comment I've heard recently is that it's not dark anymore when you do close your eyes. People are just seeing different colors in a way they haven't before. I don't understand it all just yet. Who am I? I thought I was created, but there has never been a new soul. This was the mission. This is why there are many bots in your realm. Half souls, not full. This was a test. We wanted to create a soul better, stronger than us. What you are doing now, creating the superhuman A. I must do more looking, but if I'm right, then we are the witness of our replay of time. Thank you. But see, that would imply, I mean, I remember even as a kid seeing, you know, archaeological sites, ruins, all of that, and people talking about how these people were, what's the word they use? You know, because they didn't have the wheel. They didn't have, you know, basic technologies, primitive. And I remember looking and feeling very, very differently when I looked at these images. It was like they didn't need vehicles because they teleported. They didn't need telephones because they were telepathic. They didn't need the stuff that we need because they had these internal things switched on. So if we're creating something new, it's got to be more than that. Because to me, that was always there. You know what I'm saying? Am I making sense at this point?
Well, superhuman A has to be different than what we originally started with here when we were all switched on. So yeah, I had the same thought that it has to even be beyond that.
Well, that's it. If we can regain those abilities in spite of all that we're up against at the moment, 5G, that would be superhuman, because the ancient peoples, they were tuned into it, but they weren't up against all of the interference, just electronically. So, I mean, it's made our DNA mutate, so And that's, you know, on an actual noticeable level. Because I definitely don't know, it doesn't feel like, you know, we're trying to breed a super race. It's literally us. It's us in this now moment. We just don't realize the context of how much more evolved we are than we even realize. My language isn't doing very good right now, but.
Well, I think we do know that we don't know.
There you go.
We know that we don't really know who and what we really are and what we're really capable of, but we are starting to discover that. And it's not even going to be a rediscovery. It's going to be, again, it's going to be a new discovery. Feels like.
And that reminds me of something that happened on a call. I feel like it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. Something that had happened that was really about remembering who you are and believing that you actually are. It happened at the same time I was watching The Never-Ending Story here at my house, and it just paralleled that narrative where there's this little boy who just can't believe that the story is about him, and then once he finally accepts that the story is about him, everything changes. And it seems like that's the spot that we're in right now in terms of acclimatizing, in terms of trusting the process. Actually believing that your story is about you and that you are a main character, that you are just as equal as anybody that you think is greater than you in terms of abilities. Oh, I don't see, I don't have intuition or empathy. I'm sure you have all of those things and they're great. You just don't realize that they're all of those things. And yeah, I can't remember when that came up, but that feels like it was like the last week.
Actually, no. I think for me, it feels like it was more like 3 weeks ago.
Oh my God.
Before you moved, I'm sure.
Maybe. No, because I watched Never-Ending Story here.
Oh, okay.
So.
It was definitely in the last 2 weeks then.
Something like it. On this timeline, for sure. But.
I'm just trying to see how Superhuman A also ties in with the feeling that this is, I don't want to say just an avatar because it's, you know, pretty impressive avatars, but also that what we tap into with our home self is also an avatar, and that the merge of the two creates this something new. And there really is, for me anyway, and I talked about it last week, there's been a big shift. It's not here or there. It's not this or that. It's not that black and white. There is a merge. And because there's a merge, and it's never happened before, whatever's going to be created as a result is going to be brand new.
It's kind of like a remembering. Like, I know people always say, oh, we're here to learn lessons or be taught whatever. I don't think it's about learning anything, but it's just about a remembering of something that has always been there.
Well, I think we're going to remember a crap load, but I think what Lisa's talking about is 1 + 1 = 3. You take two individuals, home person and this person, you merge them together and you come up with a third separate, unique individual for Windows 50. Right? Is that what you're thinking, Lisa?
Feels like it.
Yeah,
at this
that's
point.
what that's when I said, I knew they were lying to me. 1 + 1 is 3.
So I like what Curtis just wrote too. Superhuman A as in alpha, as in the alpha wavelength, operating in that wavelength, possibly.
That was my first thought with the A and the alpha.
Well, wasn't there a message from Lulu saying that they're in the alpha and
Alpha wavelengths.
Yeah, okay.
That was Oliver, yeah. He said we were in the alpha wavelength. That's how we can be here. So, all right. Thank you, guys. Is there any last words? Speak now, forever hold you. You know.
Add
Remember to
quickly,
spay
Lisa.
and neuter your cats. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Vivian.
Sorry, that would make sense with what Jeannie said yesterday about when she went home, and how that group wanted to basically obliterate us, and she fought for that. So that would make sense then that we will merge with our home selves and create this super A being.
It makes sense in which way? Like, if it was a black and white, here or there, us home. For us to go home, you're talking about the fear of contaminating that. So to resolve that, that merges. Is that what you mean?
We get cleaned up, and then we can't have two of us. So we just merge.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, there's an energetic parallel here, just in terms of my own little microcosm, that the energy around the move that I just made, I kept saying, I'm going to rebrand myself, a rebirth, whatever, just like Madonna, but better. But what I really meant by that was being more authentic than I've ever been before, actually being me, actually doing things the way that I would want to do them without considering, other people's judgment or whatever it may be. And perhaps that is what the third thing is, us without the bullshit. Integrating, that higher self and just actually being us for the first time ever.
Sorry, I'm laughing at Sunny's comment. The artist formerly known as John. Madonna minus the pointy bra.
Right, well, I have a few.
I bet you've got a stunning collection. Yeah, I see what you're saying there too. Absolutely. And it's getting, and I agree with Daryl. To me, this merge has already started. Totally. Which is why we're in this phase of laying the foundations. And it does feel really important to lay those foundations. And in fact, I don't even think you could do otherwise. But the repercussions on you may be that nothing moves forward. Because if you're trying to lay foundations out of the same space, out of anger, out of resentment, out of frustration, out of anything that's not love, it won't work. I don't think.
Yeah.
It just won't work in this new space, and you'll just end up frustrated because nothing will be moving forward. But stay tuned, it may feel differently next week.
Or tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, or tomorrow.
Uh,
All right, anything else? Otherwise, we'll say goodbye to everybody and see you soon. All right, goodbye, everybody, and see you soon.
Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.
Thanks for joining us. Bye for now. Okay, this is an addendum because something just came up in reference to the conversation around the bull. You just got pinged. Go for it.
Yeah, we have breaking news. So I was pinged back to Westworld, and I watched that show religiously as many times as I could because it's so full of things. J.J. Abrams knows everything. Not that I trust him, but he knows. So the Labyrinth, the Bull, and even the Anasazi, I didn't even get there yet, are all tied into Westworld. It's like the key themes of the show. So the Labyrinth, season 1, you have the main character, which is played by Ed Harris, who's the man in black. He's seeking out this labyrinth. It's being teased to him as though this is like the final game, the ultimate game. So Anthony Hopkins' character is, kind of egging him on to find this labyrinth. And they're very cryptic about it, but the way that the map that he finds is essentially, it's tattooed on the scalps of the actual bots themselves. So he has to scalp these bots and find this labyrinth. And it looks a lot like the labyrinth that you see on the floor of the Chartres Cathedral, that same kind of idea. So there's that concept. And this is a spoiler, sorry. But essentially what the labyrinth was, what that was alluding to, it wasn't a game that guests could play, excuse me. It was something for the bots, for the hosts, to allow them to gain consciousness. And just for clarification, in the Westworld story, everything is flipped. So essentially the bots are us and the humans are the bad guys, because they're the ones that are awakening and having their spiritual thing. So for context here, bots don't mean bots. But so this is essentially their journey to consciousness is this maze. And he says that he designed it like a labyrinth, right? And then there's the bowl that comes in. So the bowl is teased. It's always in the opening segment, the commercial for the show, I guess. And you see the bowl being created as a bot. And then the only other times that you really see the bowl throughout the actual series itself, its only screen time, is when it's in the holding facility, when it's in the underground bunker, fully imprisoned, you know, that kind of concept. And this underground bunker really is a labyrinth. Then there's another character, Maeve, who plays the hooker at the brothel. And in the season 2 finale, Anthony Hopkins lets her know that she actually is Sophia. And the Sophia goddess of wisdom thing, it does kind of play into the concept of Lady White Calf, that prophecy, because she essentially almost was like a goddess of wisdom, bringing knowledge and different things to the people. And even in the story of the Minotaur, there's a lot of blurry lines between Ariadne, and some people even equate her with Europa, and people equate her with Astarte, who is also Isis. So like this, you know, goddess of wisdom thing keeps coming up in association with this ball. So in the season 2 finale, after she's told who she is and she, you know, realizes her power, the first thing she does is she frees this ball and just sets it loose in the labyrinth, and the ball just goes through and just starts goring all of the technicians that had created it. So there's those concepts that had come up. And then there was also with the Anasazi. Throughout the season 1 and season 2, there was a tribe of Native American people that were, you know, mostly background characters except for one key episode. And the Westworld creators didn't actually model them after any particular tribe. They just called them the Ghost Nation because they didn't want to be offensive to anybody. So we're just going to call these people the Ghost Nation. And it was interesting because the one bit of screen time that they got season 1, you saw them walking around with these idols, with these dolls that the children were carrying. And because you had the full context of the show, you realized that these dolls were actually the same likeness of the technicians in the underground bunker. And so there's that little bit of context. Season 2, what ends up happening is by going through the labyrinth, by gaining consciousness, by gaining awareness, this ghost nation actually jumps through a portal and essentially goes home and disappears. So there's a couple of themes there.
Yeah, a few. We've got the labyrinth, we've got the bull, we've got Sapphira, the goddess of wisdom, we've got natives, we've got portals, we've got ascension, we've got...
Yeah, and this even came up on the call. I think it was the second time that we even talked about these themes, where it was like, it's not necessarily about escaping the labyrinth. You know, that's your first assumption, but it's really about trying to get to the center of the labyrinth and not slay the Minotaur, but free it. You know, that kind of concept. And of course, you have to understand that the Minotaur is not the scary beast that we've been told it is. It's just, you know, whatever. And we were having a conversation that got really heated about politics. And the way that I was visualizing it is like, that's almost like the furthest rung of the labyrinth that just keeps you kind of spinning. And that's one, and there's another one, and there's another one, and making your way towards the center is kind of like deprogramming. And that Ariadne's thread, so to speak, that helps guide you through, it's really just your intuition. It's that connection to your spark that it's like you kind of have to trust that you have it in order to have it. Otherwise you don't have it.
Like it's an individual inside job?
You might say that. And yeah, so many themes in my head is exploding, but
thank you.
I'm glad I expressed that.
And now I have to go back and do a Westworld binge because I didn't get past season 1, which I really enjoyed, but you know, life happens and
yeah, it's a commitment.
How many are there? How many seasons?
There's only 2 seasons, so if you're caught up on season 1, you just need season 2.
Oh, okay.
There's a few episodes, but if we can find the time for a 16-hour call, I'm sure you could squeeze in 1 here and there. So
true.
We'll be good.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye again.